Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Ori Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
So how have you been? I mean, it's been, 3, 4 weeks since we sat down, I think, with saving the retreat stuff for another time. How's everything else going in life?
Everything is going really great. The one thing I do want to say about the retreat is I would love to see your opinion of it because,
Yeah.
I didn't realize how intense it would be. And it's after the fact, someone described it as the Marines of meditation. And
Okay.
I got to say that that's probably a very accurate description. I mean, this is
Yeah.
not your mom and dad's version of just sitting down and like putting your hands in like one wonderful little position and meditating. It's a matter of going deep for 11 hours a day. So I would really, really love to get your opinion on it, like once you've gone through it. And can't say it's for everyone even, quite honestly, but
Yeah.
I think that you would do great with it.
How many days was it now? I forget.
So 9 days of silence and then 1 day of
Okay.
integration.
Oh,
And
interesting.
each person has their own fair share of issues surrounding it, kind of thing. For me, for example, my first 2 days were hell. After that, by day 8, I was sitting there having breakfast, thinking to myself, I think I could become a monk forever. Whereas there's
Yeah.
other people that, my girlfriend, for example, the first 2 days were fine. Day 6, she was ready to like leave that place immediately. So things come up, and when you can't talk to anyone about it, when you can't write a note about it, when you can't do anything about it, they fester and they stew in your brain and they eventually come back and bite you, and you have no choice but to view them.
So I'm ready to go too, but before we move on to more recent things, I guess, how hard is it to get into? And just from my point of view, is it something like, let's say I want to go this summer because I'll be back in the US all summer. Like how soon out? How many times do they run it? When should I book? I imagine they have a website, of course. So
Exactly. You get on their website and they let you know when the next one is coming up. And pretty much the moment that they let you know, I would suggest that you sign up because
sure.
it's free, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And their logic is that they want you to experience the retreat from the point of view of, for lack of better wording, that sense of that you're a beggar, the sense that you are being given everything absolutely for free, because that adds that element of owing it to the other people that are doing all these wonderful things for you. So, and because that's free, it's people all over the world are signing up for it very, very quickly. And then after the retreat, they say, once you've experienced it, then decide how much it was worth to you and make a donation to allow us to make it free for the next set of people.
I was just assuming it was going to cost me $5,000 or $6,000. I was going to do it anyway. That didn't matter to me, but that's really interesting, man. That's cool.
It
That's cool.
it
Yeah.
really is.
So
And because it's a donation at the end of it, I'm sure that some people donate $50, some people you donate what you can. And
yeah.
it really is a giving group of people. You have people donating of their time to make sure that you have all the food you need. It's every single thing is so well taken care of that the only thing you need to think about is yourself and the meditation practice.
Yeah. No.
So pretty intense, but I would definitely say, if you want to do it in summer, get on their website and start looking. And I think you can actually say, allow yourself to be notified when the next retreat shows up.
Well, we'll like a little bit of logistics of it, then we'll get into the actual retreat later. So, okay, so it's in North Carolina, and then real quick, like what's the name of it in
Georgia.
case anybody wants to? Oh, Georgia. Okay, and the name of the facility, I'll post it in the notes as well. So,
I think it's called Southeast Vipassana. I would have to actually get the
okay.
exact name of it. But what this guy did, which is just so brilliant, and again, we're getting into the concept of the retreat.
I know.
But what this guy did, the only way I could describe it is that's the McDonald's of meditation. In the fact that this guy, who's actually your teacher that you're learning from, died in 2000, but he had been teaching it since I think 1970s, 1980s, and so he taught it so many times that they've got videos of him giving every single lecture, and he does it so well that at this point in time, they actually have every single meditation recorded. At the end of every single day, you have a video of him talking, telling you, this is the end of day 1, this is what you experienced, here's what we're going to be doing on day 2. And so any retreat you go that is a Goenka retreat, which is the man that is teaching it, is going to be the exact same regardless where you are. The exact same schedule. You're waking up at 4 a.m., you're meditating at 4, 6:30 is breakfast, 7 a.m. you're in the hall and on day 2, you're listening to meditation of day 2 from Goenka. And so it's really, really so well done. But I believe, to answer your question, it's Southeast Vipassana. I can send you through the exact link.
We'll do a deeper dive on that, even though I really want to get to do it now, but we'll save it. So anyway, retreat aside, it's been a few weeks since we sat down recording. A lot of exciting things going on in both of our lives, of course. So yeah, what's new in South Florida? What's been going on in the day to day, Ori?
Day to day for Ori is actually really great. As you know, obviously, you and Nat are doing some amazing work on getting everything set up for me. And sessions are just wonderful. It's such a wonderful thing to actually get a chance to shift people's lives. And I had hit on this on the last podcast, which is just so really wonderful for me. It's a shift that I'm starting to notice in my mind that actually became even more profound on the retreat. Just that feeling of being able to do exactly what I love and leaving all the rest to the professionals such as you. And really, it's one of the biggest things that I realized on the retreat and in this process was how many beliefs I had around work and the fact that it can't really be enjoyable. And you always think of work, and society has us gotten to this place that we really believe that work has to be this thing that you have to do in order to get money. And thanks to you entering into my life, the beautiful thing that shifted was me actually getting a chance to do the stuff I'm absolutely in love with and realizing the fact that you can actually just smile your whole day and really enjoy it that way. And that's been the true beauty of South Florida, to the point that a lot of these days I'm doing work, and at the end of the day, I kind of feel guilty that I didn't do enough when I realized, holy cow, I did exactly what I needed to do today.
I did take a lot of your advice from the last time we talked, actually, which was wonderful about just thinking. And again, it's so strange because I'm no stranger to all these influencers and all, the gurus and everything else, whatever you want to call them. But all the people that you and I both follow, that we listen to on the meditation side of things, on the scientific side of things, which are, a lot of overlap there. I hear these things all the time, but it still needs to be reinforced, and we touched on that a little bit also. But before I get into how hectic my life has been, even though you told me so and I knew better, what does a typical day look like for you? How many sessions do you have? How do you block off your day? Like, let's say you wake up at this time, and how does that roll out?
So most of my day is actually doing admin work, which is, thank God for you and that, it has actually started shifting over for me. And I'll usually book no more than 2 sessions a day, because I believe that you already know this, but I don't really put a time limit on my sessions. I like continuing to work until we hit a natural ending point. So a session may be 45 minutes and it may be 2 hours, 45 minutes. And so that being the case, I generally schedule at least 3 hours between sessions, because I also want to make sure that I'm fresh for the next session. And then it's my clients between sessions. If they have any issues, I definitely want to respond to them. And so we're usually on text or WhatsApp. I usually have, I don't know, 10 different texts a day from a client or multiple clients of just what's going on for them and making sure that they have what they need to progress through the process, and just reminding them of what they need to be reminded of.
It's so interesting, fascinating to me these days, especially since we're all remote now. Shit, 30 years ago, we wouldn't be working together. Maybe we would. It'd be a phone call every once in a while. Internet was super slow. We had fax machines and all that crap. Even, I mean, sure, cell phones were around, but not many people had them. It just, what we can do now, literally thousands of miles from each other, of just moving a task along or assigning something, or everything that comes along with productivity. And so there's also a flip side to that too, because the more efficient that humans get at things, the more we tend to take on, which has kind of been my thing. This is not a secret. It's been kind of my thing over the last couple of years, where I'm like, okay, well, I just developed a system or a process to do something 3 times as fast as I used to be able to. So what do I do? Instead of taking more time to rest, I go find more things to do, more work things to do. So I'm in that zone where I'm struggling with, and it's a conscious thing. I know it, where I'm like, I'm just too busy. And it's not that I dislike the work. I'm just very, very busy. And I'm like, I'm going to have to start, and it's in the works. Excuses every time I talk to you, but things are trimming down. I do have somebody coming on board that I mentioned as I don't want to call her a VA. She's more than that, more like an administrative or operations manager, which will be good across the board, because she's going to be jumping in on the things. She's a ClickUp certified person. So anyway, processes, automations, and tools are great, so long as everyone has the mindset to, okay, now we've freed up some time. Let's not try to fill it with more work, if that makes any sense.
Well, so my view on that is slightly different, but I completely agree with you. I love that idea of, I never want to retire. And I've taken 3 different retirement breaks in my life. I had 3 different careers, and I just basically jumped across and said, you know what, I'm not doing anything for the next year. And the thing that always kind of hit me, especially in this last break, was the idea of, I don't want to be retired. I just want to do the stuff I love. And so if you're doing the work that you love, at the end of the day, you feel empowered. You feel like you're having the most wonderful life that you could ever possibly imagine. And the big revelations for me, as I mentioned earlier, was that fact that if you don't like doing something, there's going to be someone else in this world that absolutely adores it. That for them, that is their joy. And if you can just link up with that person, and if you have a big enough vision that allows that person to also earn an income, then what you've got is you've got the ability to give to that person their joy, and you continue doing your joy. And then, yes, you automate it, you do everything in such a way that you take away the stuff you don't like. Then you have more free time. And what do you do with that free time? Find more things that bring you joy.
Yeah, that's a nice
And
way to
so,
reframe it.
so it's, I mean,
Instead, yeah,
yeah. So
I
if
like
you're
it.
just bringing in more work for you, and at the same time that work is bringing you into a place that you're doing the stuff you don't like, I guess the big question that needs to be asked is, I mean, how much of that could you somehow hand off, automate? And obviously there's going to be a process associated with that. And get yourself back to that point that, like, I mean, you do some things so spectacularly well that there's going to be people out in the world that would like to pay you a king's ransom for the stuff that they hate doing.
Yeah, so you hit another good point. What the barrier's been, or the roadblock has been in recent history of, and this is going to be a very narcissistic, pat myself on the back kind of thing. But what's happened is there are a lot of functions that I wish I could hand off to people, and some of this could just be my insecurity because I have to be in
And
control
no
of
one
things.
can do it as well as you.
Yeah, that's right. God damn it. It's me. That's right. So yeah, and it actually has proven to be true on a couple of occasions. It's never as bad as we think it's going to be. I've actually been pleasantly surprised by people that have helped out with certain things, but some of it also is on the other end of things. So I can give you a couple examples without going into details because who cares? But there are some client accounts that I have now that are coming to a happy end soon, meaning, I've done everything they've needed because not all projects last forever. Sometimes it's a brand new website or something, and then that's it. So there are some things that are coming to very pleasant ends, but it was very hard for me to outsource or to bring other people in on things because the client, quite frankly, wanted me in the meetings and wanted me to do certain things. Now, will they know all that behind the scenes? Of course not. So there's a spectrum here. Some of it is I'm probably good at what I do, and some of it's my neuroses. I need to start trusting. But I have had some run-ins with people that I've tried to give things to or offload work to. What ended up happening was, honestly, is I just ended up doing twice the work because I would show them how to do something, and then I would have to go in and fix it after the fact. And I don't mind teaching, and I'm somewhat patient.
And I'm
It
sure you're
just
very
wasn't
good at it. Yeah.
it wasn't the time for that at the time. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah,
So
that was yeah.
So let me hit you up with something because I think that this is
Sure.
actually something that happens in modern day society in a big way that we necessarily believe that we need to be doing our job.
Mm,
And so let me just hit you with a small little mental exercise for a moment. If
sure.
all of a sudden you opened up your bank account, you checked your bank account online in a moment, and you find that you've got $5 million sitting in your bank account that you weren't expecting to have.
Sure.
With those 5 million, could you hire a person that could do the job 20 times better than you? Or is this not a matter of money? Is this a matter of, because a lot of times what we end up doing is we end up trying to find the person that's affordable more so than the person that's the correct fit.
Yes, that's a good point, and I can give you a couple recent examples. Not to veer away from the question. I have a bunch of connections in this space now, the marketing space, and of course from all my other jobs and everything. I just a lot of people, So I brought some in recently, and I found that for a couple of projects that we were working on, this was a few months ago, I brought in a team of a few people that are very good at what they do. But then I also poached some people from a previous place. And when I say that, there's no legal issues there. There's no
Understandable. Yeah.
non-compete. But I like to say I poached it from. And I found that my hesitation in the beginning to bring on the people that I knew were higher priced, because I'm like, well, I could spread this out amongst people that don't charge as much. That ended up being 5 times the work than if I just gone with the expert in the
Exactly.
beginning and just trusted the process. So yes, that's exactly
It's
what happened. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember our first interview, like how scared I was to actually hire you because I was like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you sound great on paper. However, are
Yeah.
you actually going to deliver? Because I'd
Yeah.
been burnt so many times trying to deal with people that were incompetent. And
Yeah.
for once, I just basically said, do you know what? I'd rather spend the money and bring in the right person and have them so enrolled in my vision and have them so enrolled in doing the stuff that they love that at that point in time, I don't need to worry about what they do. It's my logic is if I pay you $50,000 a month, and please God, may we get to that level. As
Yeah.
long
Be
as you
great.
earn me 50,000 and I get to do the stuff that I like,
Yeah.
I'll find another way to do the things to earn more money for myself. but I've offloaded so much work off my plate that it makes perfect sense. So for me, it does make sense at the beginning. And I mean, this is a very utopic view of things. I mean, to basically say, go ahead and spend $50,000 on a person. But you find that that doesn't tend to be the case. People are actually very, very willing to work with you and actually allow you to, as long as they understand your vision and where you're going and they can see their place in it. I think most people are very excited to join you on something that they feel like they get a chance to have the joy that they have and know that they're going to grow into the position that, please God, you will be earning the $50,000 a month. I wish nothing more than for you to earn $50,000 a month. And I'll put in one thing more. The one thing that I love is the idea of having very lazy employees. And what I mean by that is, I don't want you to be doing the stuff you don't like. I want you to find a way to, if you outsource it, just get my job done. I don't care if you don't come to my meetings, as long as the things I need to have said are said and you get the memo and you know what to do with it. That's fantastic. I want you to be lazy. I want you to do the stuff you like. And as long as you're doing the stuff you like and you figure out a way to get rid of the other stuff and my stuff gets done, I don't care how it got done. I don't care if you waved a magic wand, and I also don't care if you sat up for 23 and a half hours a day. All I care about is I got my stuff done. But I also know that if you waved a magic wand and got it done, you're going to want to do the same thing again tomorrow. And you're not going to be burnt out working with me.
That's a good point. You have no idea how much I needed this today because let me tell you about my morning. I look at all the things I had to do today and it's manageable, but it's probably, I overbook myself all the time as far as just what I think I can accomplish. I know it's like there's some fallacy there, whatever it is that we think we can do more, but it actually takes like 1.5 times, but nobody ever learns that lesson either. But yeah, the day didn't start very great. And of course, we're more effective. We're more effective also if we're not mentally tired or stressed out or task switching all the time. I don't know what it is. It's almost like I'm addicted to being busy. So I don't know if we touched on this before, but I'd love to get into this no matter how deep we go today. But
I would love to.
so my mom is extremely anxious. She may not say so, but she's so when I was grew up in a great place, what's it called, middle class, both parents were government employees, beautiful home, not a single complaint. I mean, really truly, just like all the things I heard and seen, well, since then in my jobs and on TV, I'm like, that can't be real, so just wonderful. I have nothing bad to say about my childhood. But my mom was just always had to be doing something. If she was sitting, she had to sit in a rocking chair so she could just rock constantly. So, I mean, when you're growing up and you're a kid, like, whatever, that doesn't even register to me. I don't care what my parents are doing. But they're like, she'd get up and clean like every little spot, like walk around clean. So, I left at home at 18. I've been gone. I go home every once in a while. We have a great time. But I noticed it in recent years. I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing the same things. And it's also getting, I don't want to say worse. Like I'll just start tidying things up and things like that. Hey, look, there are worse habits to have than cleaning. And I like to be super busy, or at least I think that I like to be super busy. And what happened up until a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, when I was a very heavy drinker in South Florida, like very heavy. But that was my shut my brain off mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a long, busy day, and then I would have like however many drinks it took at the time. Like now it takes me 3 beers, and I'm like, I need to go to bed. Back then I could probably drink 15 easily, on Las Olas, but that was my, okay, well, if I'm buzzed and my brain's slowed down, I know I can't work right now. But other than that, I'm like, I have to be doing something. And it's, I'm sure you have a lot to say on this, but every day it's my mind, man. So
So you're actually hitting the exact reason why I believe human evolution movement needs to be around. And the way I like to say it is that you're born into this world with very specific skills. You are an amazing content creator. I suck at content. I can talk to a person, I can help them through their issues in an amazing way. For like the example I always give is when I was 17, I needed to earn some money, so I became a waiter. The amount of cutlery and the amount of plates and glasses I broke for that restaurant is beyond imagination. I just discovered I'm a terrible waiter, but put me in front of people, let me speak, and I have my power. However, if I grew up in a family where you were told that the only thing you can do to earn money is that kind of work, you'll keep doing that work and you're going to say, well, I want to help people. And you're going to say, well, that's not really a real way for me to earn money. And I think I shared this with you in our first session, that when I was in high school, I was doing hypnosis. I loved it. And my family said to me, go off and study finance because that's what a good Jewish boy does. Yeah. And I went off and I got a 4-year degree in finance. And everything inside of me said that it was wrong, but I was good at math. I was good enough at getting it. I graduated towards the top of my class. And at the same time, as soon as I got into that job, I could hear the child inside of me screaming and crying, going, what in the world are you fricking doing? It's like you're making the biggest mistake in your life. But when you grow up in a certain environment, you fall into their hypnosis. You fall into the story that that environment has for you. And this is actually very specifically the video I wanted to share with you. And then from there, I'm actually going to describe to you what that's about and how this all links together.
Got it.
My father was an alcoholic. Mean fucking drunk. He'd come home hammered, looking to wail on somebody. So I'd provoke him so he wouldn't go after my mother and little brother. Interesting nights were when he wore his rings. He used to just put a wrench, a stick, and a belt on the table and just say, choose. Well, I gotta go with the belt there, Vanna. I used to go with the wrench. Why the wrench? Because fuck him, that's why. Your foster father? Yeah. So, what is it, like Will has an attachment disorder? Is it all that stuff? Fear of abandonment? Is that why I broke up with Skylar? I didn't know you had. I did. You want to talk about it? No. You will?
Let's stop there for a moment and let's actually put that into perspective, and then we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
So you grew up in a household where you saw your mother constantly anxious. Mm-hmm. And that is just the hypnosis that you received in that moment, that you basically said, this is what adults do. This is what it means to be an adult. You always have to worry about this or that, or you have to get stuff done. That is what I do. And now you're past the age of 43, is it?
Yeah, 44 soon, but even though I look like I'm 55 with all the sun scorched with the gray hair, but yes, 43.
Okay, so you're 43 years old, and as a 43-year-old, you still have your conditioning from your mother still driving you, sitting there saying that what you need to do is always keep yourself busy. So you manage to automate tasks away, and that little voice in the back of your head, that thing that you learned from your mother, sits there saying, well, Lee, go find some more work right now. You gotta keep it going. You gotta keep it going. It's not any different than in this movie, if you know this movie. And to me, this is one of the better movies in the world. And this scene is probably one of the best scenes I've ever seen, specifically to describe this, but just an amazingly, perfectly put together scene. Here you've got a kid that gets abused as a child on a daily basis, and he needs to feel safe in this world. In that moment, one of two things can happen. One is that you become complacent and you basically say like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me and I'm terrible, and you become a victim. And he took it the other way, where he became a delinquent and basically said, well, here's a belt, here's a wrench, which do you choose? And he goes, I'll take the wrench because fuck you. And now all of a sudden he's seeing Robin Williams because he's a delinquent, because that voice in the back of his head of a little kid that got beaten up by his foster father is still there, sitting there saying to the whole world, screw you guys, fuck you, I don't care, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, and you guys can't control me. Can you kind of see the correlation between that and you growing up with a mother in a very different environment, but getting the conditioning that lets you know that the only way to survive and to succeed in this world is to always be busy, to always worry about the next thing that comes along, so you're always prepared for it. And you're going to sit there and you're going to rock in your chair and you're going to be just like your mother, because that is what you learned to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so right now, and I really want you to lock this into your mind in terms of the fact that this is what you are doing. You're literally taking what your mother taught you and you're showing it, where you get stuff done, you're doing amazing work, and there's that voice in the back of your head that sits there saying, I've got to be the one showing up at the meetings. I've got to be the one teaching people. I've got to be the one doing all these things. Now, here's an interesting thought. So I was a stage hypnotist. So imagine as a stage hypnotist, you came up on stage, I had you very, very, very deeply hypnotized. And actually, let me go even one step further. Let me tell you a story from my past. So I grew up doing hypnosis, as I told you, in high school and all the rest of it. And one of my best friends in high school was also playing around with hypnosis and very, very good at it. And I moved off to the States and I went back to South Africa to visit him. And I was, I don't know, about like 24 years old, something along those lines. And I go to see him and he says, hey, let me hypnotize you. And at this point in time, I've done so much hypnosis, I go down like a frickin' rock. It's like, you tell me sleep and I'm like, I'm out. I'm out for the count. It's a wonderful thing. So he hypnotizes me and he's just playing around and there's a few friends there. And so he just wants to have some fun. So he says something to me. He says, in a moment, I'm going to count to 3, click my fingers. And when I do, I don't remember exact terminology he said, but I think it was something along the lines of, I'm going to say the word now. And then a few minutes later, I'm going to say the word then. And as soon as I say the word then, you're going to forget everything that happened between the word now and the word then. You're not going to know what happened in that gap of time. And it was going to be a really, really funny thing to have happen. You know, it was going to be a wonderful thing. So he goes, counts to 3, clicks his fingers. I wake up. Everything is great. And he goes, so how are you feeling now? And I'm like, yeah, it was great. Everything was wonderful. And he goes, cool, let's go to the other room. So we walk to the other room. He goes, okay, then. And in my mind, now here's the beauty of hypnosis. I knew that he said now, I knew that he said then, I knew what happened in the middle. But hypnosis is such that even though you know what's going on, your brain kind of overrides it for a moment, and it actually, it follows through on the suggestions that you've been given. So in my brain, even though I had the timeline of what happened, and I saw that we walked to the other room, I knew what he said, everything else, the moment he said the word then, my brain said, I don't remember what he said since he said the word now. And so in my mind, all of a sudden, imagine that idea that you're in one room and then out of nowhere, you're in a completely different room, sitting in a different chair, and everyone's laughing. In my mind, I'm sitting there getting confused. And even though I knew what was going on in my mind, there was that thought of, am I losing touch with reality? I don't know how I got into this room. Did I black out? Like, what happened? My brain is trying to make sense of what's going on in that moment. And I'm getting like freaked out and everyone's laughing around me. So I'm like, what are you guys laughing at? That's hilarious. What's going on? And then he goes, okay, now. And then he goes and he throws a pillow at me and I catch it. And as I catch it, he goes, then. And again, I'm already confused over being in a different room. And now out of nowhere, I don't know how, but I'm clutching a pillow.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I seriously started having the fear that I'm developing a psychiatric disorder, that I'm actually developing psychosis. I'm blacking out and I don't know. And I started having this fear that I'm losing touch with reality. Imagine that was just a continued hypnosis that was going on for a moment. And he just left me in that state. And at that point forth, whenever I hear the word now and I hear the word then, these kinds of things happen. I would end up in a psychiatric institution at some point in time because I would keep that story going in my head. Now, imagine that you are the therapist or the psychiatrist in that psychiatric institution, and you know that the hypnosis happened. You go, Ori, you were hypnotized. And I go, no, I don't think you understand, doctor. It's not that I was hypnotized. I'm actually losing touch with reality. It's genuinely happening. I caught up. I don't know what's going on. And I'm starting to freak out. You as a doctor in that moment need to break that hypnosis for me. You need to get me past those suggestions that he gave me. That's really what you have to do for me in order to heal me in this moment. So you're going to say, Ori, that was hypnosis. And I'm going to go, yeah, Lee, I get that it was hypnosis, but I don't think you understand. I'm losing touch with the reality. And you go, no, Ori, listen to me. You're not losing touch with the reality. This was hypnosis. And I go, no, Lee, you don't understand. I'm losing touch with reality. And it's going to be this back and forth that's going on. And ideally, if you are a good enough therapist, what you're going to do is you're going to manage to have me remember that suggestion deeply enough that something in my brain switches, and that's what ended up happening for me. I actually remembered the suggestion. I always knew that the suggestion was there, but I remembered it clearly enough that I was able to piece everything back together and recreate my reality and tell myself I'm not going crazy. Okay? So now let's go back to that scene, and I want to play the next part. Keep that story in mind, and then let's actually take it a little bit further for you specifically.
I don't know a lot. You see this? All this shit. This is not your fault. Look at me, son. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. I know. No.
Hypnosis is starting to break.
It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. All right? It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean. Not you. It's not your fault.
Here we go.
It's not your fault.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I really want to put that into perspective for you in terms of like, so take it back to his story, where as a child, he's convinced that there's something wrong with him. He's convinced that this is why why his father beats him. And so he develops this persona of, screw you guys, I'm going to always pick the wrench. I'm always going to be the juvenile delinquent. And then Robin Williams tells him it's not your fault. He's like, yeah, I know that. I've been told that hundreds of times. The same way that my therapist would tell me, Ori, this was hypnosis. And I'd be like, yeah, I know it was hypnosis. And then, but Robin Williams is smart enough to say, no, Will, listen, it's not your fault. Yeah, I know that. Look at me, son. Look at me. It's not your fault. And all of a sudden, the hypnosis starts breaking. And as the hypnosis really breaks, the breakdown that happens isn't the breakdown of a 20-something-year-old man. It's the breakdown of a 6-year-old child that was convinced that it was always his fault. And you can see in the tears that come out that it's finally the release of all that bent up frustration inside of him that is finally being released. And the reason why I bring this up, specifically based on your example, is it's not to say that your mother abused you. She definitely did not. And I'll take that back because my belief is that we're all abused on some level. Not in terms of beating you with a wrench, thank God. The thought that you have in your mind of the fact that you always need to be doing something, the thought that you have in your mind of the fact that you always need to be anxious about how things will come to you next, that is hypnosis. That is pure hypnosis. And the thought that you have in your mind of the fact that you have to do everything yourself, that's hypnosis. And the exact same way that a good therapist would have to get me to realize the fact that I was hypnotized or that I managed to do it to myself, the exact same way that Robin Williams managed to do it for Matt Damon in that specific scene, you have to actually understand the fact that what you're doing right now is you are living under the hypnosis that your mother created for you. There's that saying, it's a Orson Scott Card. It's like one of my favorite sayings. It's like, we question all of our beliefs except for our deepest ones, because those we never think to question. And the thing is, it's like you sit there saying like, yeah, I know I should be delegating more work. I know I shouldn't have to take on more things. But that little child inside of you, the hypnosis, is sitting there telling you the exact same way that was telling me, you're starting to lose your mind. Your hypnosis sitting there saying, I can't do these things. And that is the big thing for me in terms of human evolution movement and in terms of the work that I do. It's that idea of having you finally understand for yourself at the deepest core level of yourself that your mother had her perspective of the world, and there's nothing wrong with her perspective of the world, but it is a perspective. It's not the perspective. And when you look at the titans of industry, when you look at Steve Jobs, at Elon Musk, at Bill Gates, as anyone that's managed to create, like, let's just say a Fortune something company, they completely understand the fact that it's not about them being busy. It's about them having the right people to back them up. I could completely be butchering the story. But Henry Ford at some point in time was put up on the stand and was told and was asked the question, like, do you know how to produce the Model 8 Ford or whatever it is, the Model T Ford, whatever it is? And he said, no, but if you hand me a telephone, I can find out whatever answers you need. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know the people that do. You don't need to do everything. You just need to get the stuff done. When you can completely understand the fact that your mother just didn't have that mentality and she was doing the best she could, but that you right now are living in a very different world and that you get a chance to control your narrative of this world, you can break that child's hypnosis and the whole world opens up to you in ways that you couldn't through that hypnosis that was stopping it from happening in the first place.
The shitty thing is that there are some rewards associated with it because I've accomplished a lot. However, I do, I'm like, what am I doing? I've got a couple hours off, and instead of just doing nothing, I'm like, oh, I should be reading something that's in betterment of whatever. Or I should be listening to like an audiobook to better, just even those things. I can't even walk without trying to do something productive, So yeah, man, it's everywhere.
And that dangerous word that you keep throwing in is that I'm sure that it came before him, but it's I got it from Tony Robbins. You're shoulding all over yourself. Like,
yeah.
I should be reading a book. I should be doing that. And as long as you're living in a world of should, you're not living in a world of joy. You're living in a world of pressure and guilt. And what would it be like? And I really want you to just play around with this picture in your mind for just a moment of what would it be like if, regardless what you did, everything could still work out good at the end. Like
Yeah.
and again, this is a Tony Robbins thing, but I realized that for me, one of the ways that I was looking at the world was me basically looking at the world and thinking, what do I need to do next? How do I fix this? What do I do? And I actually worked very hard to transform that thought in my mind, instead of like, what do I do now, to what if everything worked out right?
So here's the thing. I have very few bad days. And when I do, like this morning was irritating to me. And I was angry when I get angry, it's maybe 90 seconds. And then I'm like, okay, that was dumb. So I'm not like, I don't hold things. Like some people get into moods for days. Never, not yet anyway. And I've said this to myself, which never works. But I literally, whether I go through my day stressing the next meeting or worrying if I delivered something properly, and look, and things happen, things do go wrong, but
Of course.
whether I spend my day worrying about all the shit I have to do tomorrow, or no matter what my mindset is during the day, the same result comes at the end of the day. Everything's usually fine. It's very rare that there's a big problem. But my brain will convince me that I'm always on the verge of everything going to shit throughout my entire day. So
I mean, that is society's hypnosis. Really,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
on such a big level, in terms of like sitting
Yeah.
there saying, if you don't worry about it, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point in time.
Yeah.
And the hypnosis that I want you to start playing around with, and it really is hypnosis, it's breaking that trance and starting to see the fact that, and actually the exact same way that Robin Williams says to him, it's not your fault, and the first time he's like, yeah, whatever. I want you to get into that same place of sitting there saying, like, everything worked out fine, even when I didn't worry about it. And the first time your brain will go, oh, you were lucky. And then you go, I did it and everything worked out fine. And your brain will say, yeah, but that was just a once-off thing. Like, I mean, there's a lot of times. Do you remember when you were 15 and you didn't think about something and then you went and the hamster died? When you actually point out to your brain the fact that it is safe, and that if you don't do something, even if things mess up, you'll deal with it because you are a competent, strong 43-year-old man. And when you absolutely understand your resourcefulness at any point in time, it's what you're basically doing right now is that you're living under the hypnosis of a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, sitting there saying, I have to do it because that's what mom told me to do. As opposed to sitting there saying, like, I was in the freaking Marines. I'm living in paradise right now. I've got income coming in. And even if I lose this job, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. Like, this is one of the funniest things that I do with my girlfriend in our relationship. And it's become like a pretty big thing for us, is at least once a week, I'll look her in the eyes and I'll tell her, I don't need you. and she'll look me back in the eyes because now she knows it, and she'll say the same thing back to me. And the thing that we're doing in that moment is we're reinforcing to ourselves that I absolutely love having you in my life. But the fact of the matter is, my life will be perfectly wonderful and great with you in it or you not in it. Of course, I love having you in it. But if you were to leave, my life will continue and I will be okay. And when you can look at your work in the same way, in every single way, and this is actually a book that will be written hopefully within the next 12 months specifically about this, but when you can look at your work and say, if I don't need this client, I don't need this one next outcome, I am capable of doing things. And even if I wasn't capable, I'm living in a world where even if everything went completely wrong, I still wouldn't be living under a bridge. It's like my parents locked this thought in my head that, like, if everything goes wrong, you're going to end up poor and under a bridge. You live in a world today where if everything goes wrong, you're on social welfare. Yeah. Like, I mean, like, you're in a place that, like, you're actually still taken care of in a really good way. So your biggest fear is not really going to happen. And you don't allow yourself to, like, really go there. You're too busy sitting there, like, stuck in the fear and not seeing beyond it and sitting there saying, this is just the hypnosis that my parents put in my mind. This is just the hypnosis society put in my mind. But, like, when you can actually look at your job and sit there saying, I don't need this to be perfect. I don't even if they fire me, I'm still going to be okay. Even if I mess up on this one task, I've shown them enough of the things I've done right that they should probably still want me. Like, I don't want you to test this with me, okay? But, like, for example, if you mess up on one thing that you do for me, you've proven yourself enough with me that I'm not going to be vindictive and cut off my nose to spite my face. I'm going to say, you know what? Lee had a bad moment. Lee had a bad outcome. And when you prove yourself by doing the things that really bring you joy, when you prove yourself by actually showing the resources you have in this world, when you prove to yourself how resourceful you are, you realize the fact that there's very, very little or very few circumstances that you genuinely need to fear.
I'm telling you, just hearing that and knowing that, and then also still, as soon as we get off this call, I mean, it's not as dramatic as I'm making it sound to be, but you better believe I'm going to start thinking like, okay, what do I need to finish? What do I need to do? I'm getting better at realizing that I can spend all day with my heart fluttering and just, whatever, or I can just go about it. The same amount of work gets done. Again, there's very rarely been a problem. I just heard the other day, and I can't remember, you may know who said this. It was some philosopher a while back, or some psychiatrist, I think, had this experiment where he hired a VA to worry for him. Like it was like an experiment. Like, hey, could you worry for me today? And he said there was a little bit of like catharsis in it. He's like, oh no, so and so is worrying about this. I don't have to worry about this. So that's a little extreme. That's actually pretty funny. But what I have done recently that's worked a little bit is I've this is going to sound silly, but I've started scheduling my worry. Meaning, let's say there's something coming up an hour from now, which I actually do. When we're done here, I have to get ready for another meeting, which I like that meeting, but still, I'm like, where I'm like now, I'm like, oh shit, did I do everything? Do I have the outlines ready? Am I ready to go? Now I'm like, you know what? I'm going to worry about that at 3:00, and then I don't know how the fuck it works, but it does. It takes it off my brain. And then by the time 3:00 rolls around, I'm not worried anymore. So that's not going to fix everything I have going on, but that's my little way of pushing things off throughout the day. That's my leading.
And it's a very valid way of doing it. I mean, like that is actually a technique from hypnosis or NLP, where basically what you're doing is that you're structuring your worry in such a way, or you're structuring the event in such a way that you're able to create some element of detachment from it. And that's all that you really need. So you sit there saying, oh, I'm worried. And you say, no, that's at 3:00. Let me do the stuff I need now. And just the fact that you're not necessarily telling that voice in your head to shut up, you're just telling it not now, later. It gives that voice its chance to actually say that, okay, fine, he's not ignoring me. Everything is okay. And that's a very, very, very powerful thing to do. It's a very powerful thing to do. And I love the fact you're doing it. There's very specific techniques I'd love to actually get into with you. Specific techniques that I've worked with over decades to actually help people get beyond this. Because like you said, we're done with this podcast, we're done with this recording, and you're going to go back to the way you were. And it's a matter of conditioning into your brain the new you. And it's a matter of creating literally that sense of detachment from your problems. And it's one thing for me to say it to you, and it's one thing for me to give you the examples, and that is the first step. Awareness is definitely the first step, but that is not the final step. The final step is when you can actually get to the point that you've now got the techniques to really do it. And the easiest one that most people do is the example of meditation, where at least once a day for an hour, you teach yourself, forget about the world outside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside, and whatever happens in the world outside, I'll deal with it in an hour and 5 minutes from now. And you're teaching your brain that element of disconnect. And the more you can get into that thought, and then in your meditations, when you start paying attention to a certain sensation you have inside of yourself, and you sit there saying, I'll deal with that sensation another time. I'm more than my body, as is one of the most common things are said in meditation. You're teaching yourself to detach away from the specific thing that's pulling you and sit there saying, right now, I'm focused in on this. And when you can take that, you can say, so right now what I'm doing is I'm going to be completely focused in on doing this thing I love, and I'll worry in 2 hours, or I'm going to do this thing that I love, and I'm going to delegate that away. You're doing the same thing. You're basically teaching yourself in the same way. But there's obviously ways to definitely speed that up and get that to a place that's a lot more fast for you. And I'd love to take you through some of those.
I definitely need the accelerator program or whatever you have before we end here, just to kind of bring it back to the retreat, but without getting into details. Part of my fascination with it, other than just wondering what's going on in my own brain, is I think there would be some value in me being disconnected for that long, just to see that when I come back out of there, that the world's still here and people were able to do things and get things done without me. I think that would be as beneficial as whatever happens, in my brain with the meditation piece. I think it's like, oh, you know what? A few things went wrong while I was in there, but guess what? Everybody's still here. Things are still getting done. I think that's kind of a hard reset. Could probably be beneficial.
My father used to have a saying, it's obviously not my father's, but he used to have the saying, the cemetery is filled with irreplaceable people. Everyone thinks that the world is not going to continue without them until the world absolutely does.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And it's a very messed up way of looking at things in terms of like that specific quote. But the fact of the matter is, you are not as important as you think you are. To the things that you are that important to, you probably don't need to worry because you are such an important part of it that even if it takes you a bit longer, but you're enjoying the process, you'll do better at it.
What do they say to the when usually at the day of your funeral, wake, whatever services one has, that people aren't going to come to the door and be like, God, you remember how hard that fucking guy worked? Nobody's going to say that. They're going to be like, well, these are the fun times we had together. These are the dumb things we did on our trip to, Key West or whatever, but nobody's ever going to be like, man, can you believe that he was putting in 12-hour days for an entire summer? Nobody cares about that shit. I'm a prime example for a person who's probably read, not all, that's an exaggeration, but I've read a significant amount of self-help, whether it's Cal Newport's Deep Work, just productivity. When I say self-help, I mean not like chicken noodle soup for the
Personal
whatever.
development, yeah.
Yeah, personal development. Yeah. So, but man, I'm telling you right now, I can read something this afternoon that I'm like, that's it. And then 2 hours later, I'm back in the same loop. I do feel better now because in my 20s and 30s, I didn't even recognize it. I was just going through life. I feel progress in the sense that I know I'm doing it now, even though I know it needs to change. So that does make me feel a little bit better. And of course, I met you, and now we're, for the benefit of whoever watches these, we're able to kind of work through some things and show other people that, there's a lot of us out here that are trapped up in this new digital world, and we're all just frantic.
One of the main tenets of my philosophy is something that I say, you're trying too hard. And what I mean by that is that as long as hypnosis is still running in your brain, you can try and change it. But what you're trying to do is that the hypnosis is still going to end up becoming the predominant thought. So you sit there saying like, oh, I know I need to be busy, but I'm going to read this book about how to relax stuff. And so you read the book and you get all the information, but in the back of your head, there's that voice there's that child's voice sitting there saying this is really cool, but mom said that you really have to try very hard. And I know I gave you the example in our first episode where I was talking about the woman that was 400 pounds, where she genuinely tried the hardest that she could at every single weight loss program that she did. She really was. But in the back of her head, she had that voice that sat there telling her, go ahead and try, do as much as you want, but you're going to be fat. That's a fact. That's what mom told you. That was a psychic prediction that you were given. And so throughout your 20s, for example, you had the hypnosis that was so deeply entrenched in you that you read the books and the books all made sense to you. But then the moment that you put the book down, you just went back to trying to implement that book, but really knowing that that wasn't the way the world worked, because that's not what the child believed. Now you're older, you've got a little bit more perspective, you've got a little bit more view of the world, and you sit there saying, maybe this isn't completely right. The final step in that is when you can absolutely understand the fact that it's really just a story. And at the moment you step out that story is when you can absolutely start making a brand new you. And that is really the final step. And it's not a matter of realizing it intellectually. It's realizing it at the core base foundational level of yourself, sitting there saying, what I've been doing so far has just been a goddamn story. I don't need to work harder. It's not the way the world works. It's the way that I was taught the world works, but it's not true. You never saw it. And this is really the main crux of it. You never saw in reality. And really think about this. You never saw in reality that you have to work harder. You were told it. You saw people that did it and it gave them results. You saw times that you did it and it gave you results. But you never saw the absolute truth in reality that if you don't work hard, you're going to fail.
So what I want to do is, so just for the benefit of our, when we do this, and anybody who's watching, I know you don't want to give me homework. I know that there are many components to this. So if I said, hey, what should I do before we meet again? You'll probably say, you could tell me there are exercises I could do, which we'll do one of these days during one of these or off camera. But I'm wondering if you had to think of something, some small change you wanted to see that I did the next time we spoke, if there was anything that came to mind there.
So let me think about the small change one. But the one thing I'd love you to do before we spoke next is to really examine the thoughts in your head to some degree and really see what are the deep beliefs that you have about yourself and society. And like I said, this is back to Orson Scott Card, the idea of we question all our beliefs except the ones that we really believe, because those we don't even believe to be beliefs. That's just a fact about reality, right? If you've got a belief that's something along the lines of you have to struggle to succeed, or without hard work I will fail, or I'm doomed for failure, or if you want something done right, do it yourself. Whatever those statements or beliefs you have in your mind, I'd love you to actually just spend 15 minutes or so, maybe 2-3 different times, and really just pay attention to what are those thoughts you have in your brain that have existed for you throughout your life that really, really are probably the driving thoughts that get you to do these things. Because like we said, awareness is going to be step one. And then once we have awareness, then we can do some pretty amazing stuff with it. If I were to give you some kind of homework that is really kind of like moving into like the next step of it, and it's so easy to say, but it's very difficult to do, and maybe this won't be the right homework. So like feel free to just tell me, Ori, that doesn't work, or that didn't work for me. But I want you to start really paying attention to the difference between story and reality. And what I mean by that is when you say, I have to do this, otherwise I will be fired. How much of that is a story and how much of that is really, really, really reality? And of course, your brain is going to sit there saying, no, Ori, you don't understand. I really will be fired. And my logic around that is if you were to just go a little bit deeper, if you're going to be fired by not doing one thing, odds are you're a pretty crap employee in the first place. But when you actually go into reality and you say, if I don't do this, if I don't show up to that meeting, but I still get the work done, would they really care? Or is this a story I've been telling myself? If I reach out to them and say, I'm too busy for meetings, I'm going to have my virtual assistant there to basically ask questions, or here's a list of the questions I'd like you to have answered for that I'd like you to answer for me. Please send through your list, and let's cut the meetings down so I can actually make sure that the amount of time I spend working for you is actually spent on work. How much of it is a story that you need to be there, as opposed to the reality that there is no way around it?
So I like this exercise. I'm gonna try this for the rest of the day. And on the note of meetings, not to shift from the mind to just the logistics of it, I actually considered charging people more for meetings. I mean, look, sometimes meetings are necessary. I get that. But standing meetings, so for example, the one I have at 3 o'clock coming up here, could have 100% been handled with an email.
2 emails.
And I'm not even sure that the other people that are going to be there want to be there either. It's on both of our calendars. Now that's something that's an easier fix than most, but I'm also the people that are always requesting things like that.
I'll stop you there for 1 second.
Sure.
In terms of, it's an easier fix than most, but you haven't fixed it.
No, I haven't fixed it.
It's an easier fix than most, but as long as it's not done, you're still being affected by it. And so it's those moments that you sit there saying, okay, fine, this is my story and it isn't real. So let me fix this one thing and give myself the pat on the back to say I'm moving forward. And the more you can start living within that new reality of I'm doing something different, the more that you absolutely start creating that possibility for you. The final step of that really boils down to the concept of actually starting to make those small changes and realizing when you hit a home run. Not basically saying, oh yeah, I hit a home run, it was lucky, but say, I did something different this time. Oh, I did something different this time. And the more often you do that, the more you're living in the reality of your changed self.